Welcome back to Big Sky Buckets. I'm Big Sky, and today we're going to do kind of a NBA draft free agency recap. Just kind of like scattered brain talk session here because I'm super late on this. A lot got in the way. I want to at least get something out, and then we'll start like digging down into Summer League whenever trades actually end up happening, or like any more trades that end up happening, Olympic stuff. So there, and then just kind of the overview of what each team is looking like going into next season, like just analyzing these teams where I think they might rank, etc. But so there's a lot to look forward to this summer, which should be nice. But I just want to get this one out. Just give my 2 cents on some of the things that happened. Some of it might be redundant from what you've heard already. Some of it might be a little bit of more of a fresher take. So let's just jump straight into it here. One of my favorite, I'm just going to go with my favorite draft prospects and fits. So like the prospect and where they landed and how I can see that actually panning out super well. The first one is absolutely the Memphis Grizzlies and Zach Edey. Now, I was pretty much a Zach Edey hater for the duration of March Madness into even the draft, right? My mock draft, I had him at 14. But I only had him at 14 because I feel like I was like tunnel visioning into the belief that there's no way the Grizzlies don't trade up for Donovan Clingan as like the best role-playing big, right? In the draft. Just in terms of he's going to be one of the best, if not the best rim protectors here. He will start day one. He'll be great. But once he went off the board at 7 to the Trailblazers, which was an interesting pick in and of itself, I was really shocked at what the Grizzlies do. Look, as a recap for what the Grizzlies season was, before the season even started, you had Ja Morant, who was going to be suspended for 25 games, so they went ahead and they got Marcus Smart to try and compensate. They went and got Derrick Rose as like kind of the reserve point guard to compensate for the fact that Ja Morant's not going to be there. They get a little bit more mature with these two guys in the locker room. And then like a week before the season actually starts, Steven Adams season-ending surgery, they don't really have any bigs left for that team, so they put Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 5 and said, let's see if this works. It didn't. And one thing after another, this team just got severely injured, and all of a sudden, the only real bright spot here, all of a sudden, their season was just over. But the bright spot was they learned that their second-round pick in G.G. Jackson was really flourishing, and I do think he's going to be a valuable part of this team going forward, and I do think they will be contenders in the West because they typically have been when healthy. But the one thing they've been missing is just a big role-playing center, someone to set screens, get rebounds, roll to the rim in pick and roll, etc. And that's just, I kept thinking of Zach Edey from the idea of him in college, and I kept fighting back against he's not going to be that guy. I think he might struggle, but from the standpoint of you just get a 7'4", 300-pound big man to help guard against Nikola Jokic, to Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, etc. There's a lot of great bigs in the West. I think that's a great fit. That's a great spot for Zach Edey because I don't think in terms of like the offensive load, yeah, there's going to be stretch fives that might be an issue, but I think you can work around maybe running small ball 5. You don't want to do it a ton with Jaren Jackson Jr., but you could, and it would work out fine. So I think I was just overthinking it at the end of the day. This landing spot, had he gone really anywhere else, I might have had issues or not talked about specifically my favorite destinations, but this one really stuck out to me because I just didn't see it coming. So congrats to the Grizzlies. I think this is going to work out well. My second favorite, or another one of my favorites, is probably Bub Carrington going to the Washington Wizards. Now, I had been trying my hardest to come up with some different mock drafts for like the number 2 pick, not being Alex Sard, not being Zachary Usache, not being Donovan Clingan, etc. Because I was like, the one thing this team probably needs is like a guard of the future. Because Jordan Poole he's a shooter, right? He's a hooper. He's not looking great after this past year, but the idea here is just get a playmaker in, someone who can play make, someone who can create shots, someone that you can develop over time and be happy with. And Bub Carrington was rising and rising. And as I was doing research on the mock draft, I was like, actually, this kid is awesome. And he is very young, one of the youngest players in this draft. The cost here is where it's kind of complicates things, but at the same time, I love the fit so much that I'm willing to look past the fact that they got rid of arguably one of their most valuable trade chips or just like assets in general in Deni Avdija, who was starting to really figure the game out this past year on the incredible contract that he's on. But so shout out to both the Wizards and the Trailblazers, because I think the Trailblazers got a steal in Deni here. And I think that had they decided to go with Bub or anyone else, it just wouldn't have made as much sense as doing this trade. So I think it worked out for both sides. But yeah, I think with all the wings, and now they've got Jonas Valanciunas, and they've picked Richaun Holmes' contract back up, it's just kind of the guards, right? The guard spot is the interesting one. The only complication here is if like they don't move off of Jordan Poole, or if he somehow sabotages touches from Bub, because there's going to be a lot of young guys now on this team that are going to want touches. So they're going to have to start working on ways to move Kyle Kuzma, Jordan Poole, etc. off this team to usher in this new era of Wizards basketball. In terms of, I don't really want to go the pessimistic route. I feel like everyone else has done their due diligence on that. I think the next one that really comes to mind, I think it's Isaiah Collier. At 29, the value is unreal. Truly unbelievable, in my opinion. I don't know how he fell to 29. I really don't. But I guess, right, if he was going to slide, which is what it was projected to be, that he'd slide out of the lottery, it's right in that middle of the first round. There were a ton of teams in there that already had point guards. I think you could have made an argument that that could have been a Pelicans destination, but then, a couple days after the draft, they trade for DeJounte Murray, so that in and of itself was immediately figured out. So I get it. I just think 29 is crazy. I think there could have been someone along the lines that could have used a point guard you could develop for a couple of years. Having said all of that, the Jazz are in need of a guard of the future. I think Keontae George is awesome. I do think he is an undersized shooting guard. I think he has worked on his playmaking, but having a traditional styled point guard in the building just helps raise the floor of this team in terms of their developing. I think this is a good spot for Collier to work on his shooting in general and understanding the game, because I think the Jazz are going to be in the Cooper Flag race, because I do think they're going to actually end up trading Lauri Markkanen, because Cooper Flag looks pretty generational right about now, and Ace Bailey is just right behind him as it stands right now. We'll look more into that in the future, but just incredible value. And then this is my homer take as a Hawks fan. It's actually not about Reece Shea, because I had made my opinions known about that. I've kind of swung back around in the past 2 weeks to being more open-minded. Whether that's delusion or not it's something, right? But AJ Griffin was like one of my favorite players for the Hawks for the past, like, especially his rookie year a couple years ago, because he went to Duke. I loved him at Duke, but we traded him to get into the second round, which I thought was insane. And then when I figured out what we were doing with that second round, I kind of immediately got hooked and was like, okay, wait a second. This kid might be really good. Nikola Jurisic, I'll learn his name, from Serbia, Mega Basket. He looks like an insane hooper. 3-level scorer. There's defensive upside there. I think it's going to take some time to develop, specifically for the NBA game, and especially because the Hawks are in such a weird position right now where there's a lot of roster spots already taken up. I think that G League is probably the route for this first year, and then he could actually immediately help this team the following year. But I really love this pick, because one of the things I loved about this draft in general was simply how deep it is in terms of like first round talent. There's not the generational talent, but you have a bunch of role players or solid players in here that could actually help teams out, and this is definitely one of those guys. There's a bunch of other prospects that landed in certain spots that I like. Jared McCain going to Philly, but those are the ones that really stand out to me. I had to throw my homer take in. So if I didn't talk about one of your favorite prospects going to your favorite team or going to the right destination, then a lot of people have already done so. Let's jump straight into free agency from here. Obviously, the winner of free agency, in my opinion, is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Trading Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso with no draft capital whatsoever being sent out is just masterclass from Sam Presti. And then getting Isaiah Hartenstein. Yes, they threw a lot of money at him, but I don't think that money actually comes into play at all until, like, realistically, by the second year of Isaiah Hartenstein's contract, by the time he's entering the third year, is when those extensions that are most likely going to be given to J-Dub and Chet will actually kick in. And at that point, they might not need Isaiah Hartenstein anymore. So I think it's a worthwhile idea to fix the biggest issue with this team, rebounding, which Isaiah Hartenstein gives you immediately. And for all the people that are saying that there might be some issue with him coming off the bench or starting, I actually do think he should start. I do think he can. I still think Chet can be the rim protector, even with Isaiah Hartenstein on the court. And I do think offensively it works, even if they are trying to run 5 out. Because I think with Caruso's injury history that is stacked up over the past couple of years, nothing crazy, but it is notable. I think him being like your sixth man just makes it so that this team is like stacked to the brim with insane defenders. This team is going to be super annoying and is my favorite to come out of the West so far, if nothing else happens in the offseason, especially in terms of any Western Conference teams. But I wouldn't say that's probably going to be the case because I think the Kings and the Pelicans have a little bit more to do. The Dallas Mavericks, I like what they did. I'm just concerned, like with the Hartenstein thing, with people that have an issue with him either starting or with the amount of money he's making coming off the bench. I have an issue here with like trying to do think pieces of what does the starting lineup look like with Klay Thompson versus him coming off the bench? Because personally, I think if he comes off the bench, this team looks immaculate, with Najee Marshall probably stepping in as 3 since Derrick Jones Jr. is gone. And then you have Klay Thompson, Quentin Grimes coming off the bench. Probably Derek Lively finally starts, so then you have Daniel Gafford coming off the bench. Like, that's a great team. I just don't think that's going to happen. However, this is a team that lost in the finals because of offense, and they definitely got better offensively by getting Klay Thompson. So I have to give them credit. This is the right thing to do. You don't want to sit on your hands after making the finals thinking you can just get back there. I always keep forgetting this during these recordings. The other prospect going to a destination I really like is Rob Dillingham going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think in the next couple of years, as he develops, probably coming off the bench there, he will inevitably take over the point guard spot, and it kind of helps extend their window a little bit by having a young lottery pick point guard in the building. He's not going to be super helpful this year, but in the next couple of years, after his rookie year, I think he will really contribute and help the Timberwolves possibly win a championship. And then in the East, there's like the top 3 in the East is now pretty much set in stone, in my opinion. But Boston brought all of their guys back. Congrats to them. That's the exact thing you should do. They said we'll pay the luxury tax, even if the ownership group kind of wants to sell the team. I'm interested in the big 3 in Philly. I have gone on record saying that I think the big 3 system itself, like the idea of it, is kind of outdated. It's not totally that. It's just you have to get the fit perfect. And this one's at pretty close to perfect in terms of a big 3. Guard, wing, big, that's what you need. And so filling in with complementary role players, I'm really interested to see what this team is. I'm probably not as high as some people. I'm definitely not super low on them by any means. I just think the injury concerns for Paul George and Joel Embiid hinder my expectations for this team. But I am excited to watch them. And then, of course, the New York Knicks gaining Mikal Bridges, bringing OG Anunoby back. This team, if you are a team that relies on your wings, you're going to hate playing the New York Knicks. The only downside is obviously losing Isaiah Hartenstein. They are about done, but I do think they might be trying to get one more big to try and replace Isaiah Hartenstein, especially with Mitchell Robinson's injury history. Because if they can't replace Isaiah Hartenstein, there's going to be issues with this team. Like, going up against the 76ers might actually be one of the worst matchups for them. Whereas if they go up against someone like the Boston Celtics might be a better matchup because of how deep they are in terms of wing depth. Those are some of the obvious ones. I guess I'm really intrigued, of course, by the Kings, the Pelicans, the Hawks, the Cavs. These four teams specifically, I feel like there's more to do. I haven't really talked about the Orlando Magic. I think a lot of people are calling them winners because they got KCP. I kind of want to just wait to talk about the Magic in a little bit. I don't think they're necessarily winners. I just think based on natural development, I think Paulo is going to be incredible. And that's kind of what my final thought was in that first round against Cleveland in Game 7. I kind of came to the realization, like, here he comes. And I think this next year he's going to take a step up. So I don't actually think any acquisition draft really mattered as much as just developing Franz and Paulo and Jalen Suggs enough to have them take a step up and them being very competitive. You know, I guess my one concern is still like, would like a real playmaking point guard on this team, which they still don't really have, but I totally get it. If Paulo and Franz can take the playmaking step up, like Paulo gets over the turn, stops turning it over as much. He was being a great playmaking forward for this team, especially during the playoffs where their offense would get stagnant a lot of times. I think they're just going to naturally get better just because they're a super young team. But adding KCP helps with the shooting department, so I guess I can throw them in as winners or like just some of my favorite acquisitions. And then I do want to quickly do one pessimistic thing. So I do want to talk about the Denver Nuggets. I can talk about teams that didn't do anything. I want to talk about the team that just quite literally got worse, and that is the Denver Nuggets. This team still could have been a favorite to come out of the West, but I don't think they are anymore. I think they are maybe a top 4 team, probably at number 4 in the West. But even with the Grizzlies coming back, that is in peril. Jamal Murray was definitely injured. The shooting concerns of this team get worse by having KCP go out the door. Christian Brown now has a much harder responsibility here because he's not a great three-point shooter, and all of a sudden he has to get there for this team to really be a contender again. And it kind of is like a snowball effect. Then Peyton Watson off the bench has to get better at being able to not get played off the floor. He has to be better at shooting and offense in general. His defense is good, but all these young guys all of a sudden have a much bigger burden because ownership didn't want to pay KCP. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't like what they did. It's more like I hated the fact they just let that happen because they could have easily stepped in and taken care of that. So it's not looking great for the Nuggets right now. They're relying on development during what is obviously their championship window since they had just won now 2 years ago. But yeah, that's all I had to say today. I tried to make this one short. I've had long ones recently, but Monday, Tuesday, we're going to talk about some of the Summer League games that are happening this weekend. I'm super excited to talk about them, some of my favorite prospects that happen, and I will break down my rule set for Summer League because there are a ton of overreactions, and Summer League is not indicative of NBA play. All right, guys. Peace.